Welcome to Shannons Club TV, the program for all motoring enthusiasts to relive the histories of cars in Australia. Join us as we look back on the defining points of our feature car and take a road trip with a proud enthusiast.
We'll also get up-to-date market news from the Shannons auctions team. Right now though, the locally built Japanese car which pushed more boundaries on the track than it did on the road, the Datsun Bluebird.
A pretty desperate advertising slogan was used by Nissan Australia in 1981 to promote the last Datsun, the Bluebird. The first four-cylinder limousine was far from being an accurate description of this car, which was intended to take leadership of the 2-litre sedan sector from the Mitsubishi Sigma. Impressive pictures showed a man inside what looked like a huge cabin, but in fact this was a particularly small man. 1981 was not one of the great years for the local industry. From the late 1970s on, sales reps had been taken out of their beloved 6-cylinder Falcons and Commodores and squeezed behind the wheels of supposedly more economical 2-litre 4-cylinder models, Sigmas, Coronas, Datsun 200Bs and the like. The new Bluebird was developed with extensive local testing to seize a significant share of such sales, while also being intended to appeal to private buyers. The timing was interesting in another respect also. Front-wheel drive was starting to supersede rear-wheel drive as the orthodoxy, first in small cars and then in medium ones. When the Bluebird appeared in May 1981, it was still just possible to describe rear-wheel drive as orthodox. Mark, I imagine rear-wheel drive was pretty important given what Nissan Australia had in mind for Bathurst.
Yeah, well, the racetrack. I mean, at the time, Nissan was trying to rein in its various export names like Datsun and put everything under the one corporate umbrella of Nissan. And to make the public understand that, the touring car program was supposed to spearhead that change. So racing in Australia particularly was very, very important. I mean, you consider they were really going after the outright cars, the Commodores, the Falcons, and in other case, the Mazda RX-7 cars like this were all rear-wheel drive. So it had to be rear-wheel drive, particularly given they wanted to introduce turbocharging.
Indeed. Coming after the dismal 200B and the ordinary 180B, the new Bluebird was, well, better. It used an Australian-manufactured rack and pinion steering system from the same company, TRW, which supplied Holden for the Commodore. It was comfortable and reasonably quiet. For me, the biggest disappointment to the Bluebird was that I remembered the brilliant Datsun 1600 launched in 1967. The journey from the 1600 to the Bluebird tells us plenty about that era of motoring. At every other time since the beginning of the automotive industry, cars have continually got faster, but the Bluebird could not match the 1600. Although the Bluebird was the most Australian Nissan yet, its retention of the Datsun name told the story. This rear-drive, narrow-bodied car had really landed in the wrong decade. Mark, although the Bluebird was a rather dull and conservative road car, it was a different story on the racetrack.
Yeah, it sure was. And that was largely due to an incredibly fast driver by the name of George Fury and the relatively new science of turbocharging. Nissan's local motorsport focus shifted from rallying to racing in 1981 with a new factory-backed Group C touring car program. And logically, the weapon of choice was the last of the rear-wheel drive Bluebirds, the 910 series 2-litre 4-cylinder sedan being built at the company's Melbourne manufacturing plant in Clayton. Although the road cars and the race cars were outwardly similar, the race car was based on a more up-spec overseas version of the Bluebird, with a 1.8-litre fuel-injected turbocharged engine and independent rear suspension. Original planning was aimed at winning the under 3-litre class. However, Nissan soon decided that if it really wanted to make a dent in the huge private and fleet sales of Ford's Falcon and Holden's Commodore, it would have to give them a shake-up on the racetrack as well. In other words, turn its class competitor into an outright contender. John, watching Nissan trying to effectively stuff a size 12 foot into a size 6 shoe on the track was all very exciting. But that didn't really translate through to the showroom, did it?
No, well, I think to use another metaphor, it's like comparing apples with cherries. blokes who had Ford Falcon V8s or Commodore V8s, they could make a connection between their own car and the car on the track. But the person with the Nissan Bluebird couldn't really connect that underpowered four-cylinder car with the fantastic turbos.
And it was a shame he missed out on that. I mean, the overseas models like the race car, turbocharging, fuel injection, independent rear suspension, we got none of that.
It was bad marketing. It really was very bad marketing not to have any kind of really hot road car to cash in on really what was quite a spectacular performance. It may not have been totally successful, but it was spectacular to watch. It was great.
It sure was. On reflection, it seems unjust that the lasting memory of the Bluebird turbo era is one of constant failures of turbochargers, gearboxes and diffs. However, that was largely a result of trying to make a four-cylinder perform like a V8 as the company boldly pioneered turbocharged technology. After 4 seasons of competition, Nissan did not have a touring car title or a Bathurst 1000 win to show for its efforts, but the Bluebirds still left an impressive legacy. They won the 1982 Australian Endurance Championship and they came within just 6 points of winning the 1983 Australian Touring Car Championship. And in the Bluebirds' final Bathurst appearance in 1984, George Fury claimed pole position with a record-smashing qualifying lap that will stand for all time as the fastest set by a touring car on the original circuit. It symbolised not only Nissan's conquering of Mount Panorama, but also the Aussie V8s, which had made it their own since the late 1960s. You can read many other great road and race stories on the Shannons Club website.
I'm Fred Gibson and today we're at the Shipperton Motor Museum and looking around the place right now and seeing some of the beautiful old cars that are here, and Nissan represents itself here in motorsport. I'm standing in front of the 1981 Bluebird I drove with George Fury at Bathurst. It's when Nissan Motor Companies started from rallying into circuit racing. This car you're looking at here today now is an 1800cc engine, and it's got a turbocharger, and the back suspension's a fully independent rear suspension in the car. And it's modified to the rules, and it's called a Group C car. And you see by the flares on it now, it runs wider wheels than that. What we're doing now, I'm working with Alan Heath at Gibson Motorsport now, restoring all our old Nissans. And this car is probably the most genuine Bluebird, because the later car the guy in Queensland owns, the last car, it's probably had a fair bit more work to bring it up to spec again. We have our cars in the workshop insured with Shannons. They are the legends for insurance on race cars. And I think a lot of the people that go to our motorsport are involved with Shannons with their cars. This car would have easily won the class at Bathurst and anywhere you raced it over those years. But the whole thing is we wanted to beat the V8s. But we tried to extract more power and more handling out of it. And that probably was one of our Achilles heels. We tried to do more with the car than it was designed to do. It should have been happy enough just winning its class in each race we went to. But the whole thing is we like to sort of go better and stretch the car, and it was a difficult car to drive. In 1984, George Fury in the Bluebird was the first turbocharged car to get pole position at Bathurst, and he had pole position against all the V8s, the Commodores and the Falcons and those sorts of cars. And that was a great effort by the team and also the car and George to sort of get pole position at Bathurst. Really, when you're a race driver, you drive whatever and probably whatever you get paid to drive. But the whole thing is Nissan built a very reliable car, and that's, I think, that was the word it always was. Nissan cars were reliable and go forever.
Well, Tiny Hanson from Shannons Auctions joins us to talk about the Datsun/Nissan Bluebird. Welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks, Mark. How are you?
Hi, Tony. I think the Datsun Bluebird must be one of the more challenging cars to talk about in Hammer Time. I don't think there's very much following for it, is there?
Very little following at the moment. It's not on our radar for the auction department at the moment, but look, who's to say that's not going to be the case in 4 or 5 years' time or 10 years' time? But at the moment, it's not on our radar.
So why do you think that is? I mean, the car had a huge profile on the racetrack through the touring car program, but it didn't seem to translate to the showroom.
It didn't translate from track to road, I don't think. Two separate cars.
And neither did the magic of the Datsun 1600, still a very, very sought-after car for rallying, or the Datsun 240Z, one of the great sports cars.
There's a great heritage there, isn't
Great
There
heritage,
is.
good racing history, but unfortunately the Datsun Bluebird, different kettle of fish.
it? Seems to have fallen through the cracks. And it is unusual because it started off as the Datsun Bluebird, and then halfway through they called it the Nissan Bluebird, which can cause some confusion in the market. But it seems to be a car that fell through the cracks because compared to some of the really exciting models that they had in Japan and other markets, we didn't get that here.
Well, we didn't get the two-door version, and we didn't get the turbo version. We got the four-door family sedan.
And we got the TRX, but that was just a dress-up
Just
kit,
a dress-up
which
kit.
was so often the case in the early 80s. They'd put GT badges or TRX badges on a car that didn't go any faster than the standard one.
Correct.
So if you were looking for one, would the TRX be the more desirable
Oh,
model?
for sure. The TRX would have to be the more desirable. Less of them made. As you say, the little dress-up kit makes them a little bit more special than the standard car. If you can find one and you like that sort of model, yeah, I'd grab it.
Well, thanks for joining us, Tiny. And remember, for all the latest auctions news, check it out on the Shannons Club website.
If you'd like a memorable image of the Bluebird in competition, visit autopics.com.au.
It's an interesting car, this one. I mean, you look at Nissan's heritage, they have made some absolutely brilliant cars over time, but every now and again there's a model like this that comes along and it just sort of falls through the cracks.
What a
doesn't
pity
it?
that they didn't put a bit of that Prince heritage into the car. You know, that's where so many of the really strong Nissans have come through the Prince line. The GTR, the fabulous GTR, 240Z and all that sort of thing, but the poor little Bluebird of not much happiness missed out on most of that.
But when you look at the specification of the local car, it could have had so much fruit in it, but they
Absolutely.
clearly were aiming at at fleet sales or something because it was so basic in its specification, wasn't it?
Finished up appealing to almost nobody.
Yeah.
We hope you've enjoyed looking back at the Datsun/Nissan Bluebird, and we'll catch you next time on Shannons Club TV. Bye for now.